Thank you guys for coming to our panel today on whether or not you should build or buy your integrations and your integration infrastructure. So this will go to about half past, and then we'll save 10 minutes at the end, so 20 till the top of the hour. For any questions that anyone has, if you guys have questions, you can drop them in the LinkedIn comments. And we have Liz from the Pandium marketing team, who is our excellent producer, and she can help you out with any technical issues. And also she'll send me any questions that you guys have. To get started here, I want to do some introductions to the excellent folks that we have here on the call. Derek, you want to share who you are, what you do, why you're here, all that good stuff?
What's going on, everybody? My name's Derek. I actually run sales and partnerships for Justuno. Live here in the great country of Texas. We all know that Texas is like a country. It's not a state, so I say the great country of Texas. I've been out here for about 10 years. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about integrations and the power of integrations and outsourcing integration builds. So,
Thanks. Travis, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Travis Logan, CTO and co-founder of Justuno. Been there obviously since the beginning, and I've seen we've gone through many transitions and updates over the years with respect to integrations of how we brought them in-house and taken them out and brought them kind of back in-house and all that fun stuff. So I'd love to, I'm looking forward to just discussing and talking about all that stuff.
Awesome. John.
Sure. Yeah, it's thanks for everybody for joining. I'm John Pruitt. I lead our sales and partnerships here at Pandium. Prior to joining Pandium, I've been in the partner world for quite some space. I've known the Justuno team for years now. I think I've been in the kind of partner space for over 10 years now. So I've known Derek and Travis and Eric, the other co-founder of Justuno, for many years, and really joined the team here at Pandium, trying to help solve the challenges around integrations that I've noticed from my partner peers over the years. And excited to be here and look forward to chatting a little bit more about this today.
Awesome. And I am Christina Flashen. I'm the CEO here at Pandium. I've been working in software integrations for almost 20 years, maybe right around 20 years at this point. Going back all the way to the AS400 on-prem days, now to what we're doing here with Pandium with folks like Justuno and others. And really excited to talk about this today, as it's a huge consideration for SaaS companies, whether or not they're going to build or buy something to help with their integrations. So what we'll cover today is sort of an overview of what is build, what is buy, and I think there's also sort of this middle road of buy some and build some. The pros and cons of each, what you should think about when you're trying to make this decision, opportunities for the future, and what you should think about as you grow your ecosystem. And for the gentleman on the call here, this is obviously quite casual, as you know us and our events. So I might call on you, otherwise you can just jump in. And I might also tell you to be quiet, but probably not. I will. Yeah. Bye, Travis. Travis is already done. He's like, I'm getting breakfast. All right. So let's start with, what do we mean when we're saying build versus buy when it comes to your integrations and also your infrastructure, and what might actually be great from the Justuno team, especially Travis with your technical background, is like, why is integration infrastructure important? Like, why do we care about any of this stuff in the first place?
Sure. In Justuno's case, of course, we're collecting emails and SMS and other zero-party data on behalf of our clients and our customers about their website visitors, and they want to be able to push that data into any number of all the different ESPs and SM notification companies out there, CRMs, and so forth. Justuno has always taken the approach of being agnostic, an agnostic platform. So we integrate in with all these different platforms and don't silo you into only being able to utilize one or two of them. So there's the importance from our customer standpoint, or the importance from our standpoint is that it brings more of a connected system, connected world, and it certainly, of course, shows better ROI, right? So the users being able to, let me get back to the screen, so I get a cycle, but being able to collect that information and get that over to the respective partner application just means that Justuno's ROI goes up. The partner's application's ROI goes up. We have a happy mutual customer and so forth.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did someone just say something?
No, I said, yep. I was just agreeing with everything they just said.
Yeah, and from when you think about how you're going to attack this problem, right? Like there's a huge universe of options, both technical and more like functional and tactical. How do you guys think about like what is building, what is buying, and sort of what is in between? Like what are the options that you guys have seen out in the world as you've worked with partners and also the integration technology space?
Yeah, so I mean, having done this for quite some time, even just with Justuno, as I mentioned earlier, we started out building. It was all built in house. Yours truly, what built quite a few different integrations, all myself as well. And you get to a certain point, and the developer debt is pretty brutal because every integration is different, whether they're a RESTful API or a graph API or a SOAP API or whatever, right? So there's that, but then you think you're done with one, and they update their API, or
Yeah.
they completely sunset an API, and you get to start basically over from scratch and so forth. Um, so there's just of course, all that continued developer debt that just stacks on the more integrations you have. Um, and then, you move over to, of course, some people transition at some point to buying it. So, there's you kind of offload the services, and there's different routes of that. As you mentioned, there's, kind of just buying it versus kind of doing a hybrid buying and building. It depends on how much you want to own, how much you want to spend. And, with regards to how much you want to own, like there's always pluses and minuses to it. I mean, you could kind of compare it to the Apple versus Android world, right? You can have an iPhone that does everything and kind of just does it smoothly and cleanly for you, but the second you want to make one small change to how it works, you're stuck. You can't. Android, on the flip side, lets you open it up, lets you really do some fun stuff with it that you can't otherwise do on an iPhone. But with that comes some responsibility. So, and there's lots of gray area, where that pendulum swings as far as how much responsibility versus how closed loop it is.
Totally agree. Derek and John, what have you guys seen in the world in the build buy spectrum?
I'll let you go, Derek, if you want to go first.
Yeah. So in the build buy spectrum, are you guys hearing an echo by chance?
Yep, sounds great.
Okay, good. I think I'm probably just hearing the echo on my end. I'm gonna kind of just break this down, I think, from like the perspective of like being in a role of partnerships and running sales and just thinking of our solution and where we fit into the actual technology stack. I think when you come to where you're thinking of it in terms of build or buy, there's pros and cons to both, but I think that when you're building, you have to be aware that there are obviously those limited resources. And then how does that also affect your opportunities and the partnerships that you have as well? So, like Travis was saying earlier, you build an integration, 3 years later, that integration isn't working the same way that it was working. Well, how does that affect, your partnerships and your sales teams when you have new individuals who are stepping into roles, let's say, that somebody was managing 3 years ago when that integration was first built, and they're stepping into the relationship, and then things aren't up to date. So what does that do? That affects the partnership. That affects the ability to work on deals together. And then that's where you see a lot of this hard work and a lot of this relationship development that happened for 2 or 3 years or however long it was, it starts to disappear and it starts to go away. So I think that it's always smart, from the perspective of buying and leading on individuals who understand it, people who have worked in these positions in these roles before, and let them be the ones that are kind of dictating that to run that for you. So your teams can focus on the things that are actually going to move the needle and drive business, right? A lot of those product blockers tend to be really biggest line in the sand there where a lot of these relationships either fizzle out or you're not able to get much done with them. So it limits your growth potential as an organization, definitely.
And I'll
Yeah,
add too. I'm sorry, go ahead, Travis.
I was just going to add onto that from a technical standpoint with the build versus buy. It's infrastructure too. Don't forget, like when you build it, you're not just writing the code for the individual integration. You also have to deal with the whole infrastructure standpoint part of it. So it's like the database, the retrying if a
Yeah.
connection cuts out in between you and your partner's API. There's scalability, of course, is a huge factor when it comes to that too. So I didn't want to leave that just on the devs integration standpoint. Those are all very large parts of it of the
Yeah.
pie.
Yeah, it kind of leads into like the next topic, which is the pros and cons of in-house build, right? I think there's inherent trade-offs with all of these things, like buying, outsourcing, some building in-house. But Travis, you just touched on I think some of the challenges of an in-house build. What would you say to a company that is trying to think about like, hey, maybe we should just build all of this ourselves? Like we are a software company, we have software engineers. How hard can it be, kind of thing?
Well, it's definitely nothing's ever as easy as it seems. So that's the elevator pitch on that one, right? So you obviously got to really, really think it through. Think a bit, don't think it through from the next 12 months, but think it through, as I kind of mentioned, and Derek was talking about, like what happens in 2 years when a third of your integrations are forcing you to move to a new version of their API. Like how does that debt look on your product roadmap, and so forth. So definitely that, of course, the infrastructure side of things, like I said, you always have to think about scaling. Hopefully you're building a product that is going to do well and scale, and you have to be able to keep up on that front too. So lots of those things, you got to unpack all of that and really think that through. um, there's initial, of course, time is money as well, right? So you're thinking, well, versus the 100% buy it situation, that might be cheap today, depending on the way that pricing model is. But if you're being charged on a per step, node, Lambda call, whatever these different ones, all the different ones out there, however they charge, that's great. But then when you start to scale, you're you're kind of beat up over it, and you can get beat up real fast and real hard. And then also a big thing to think about is whatever you do, if it doesn't work out in a few years from now, for one reason or another, you chose to buy it and the pricing's a problem. You chose to do it in house and scalability is a problem, and you see the grass is greener on the other side, right? And you want to go try the other route. Think about what that headache is going to be like. That is
Yeah.
surgery right there. That's what I call, you guys have heard me say that a few times. Like that is absolutely like spinal surgery right there to do. So
It
you
is.
got to keep that in mind. Like just, and that's again why you have to really look into the future when scoping and figuring out which route you want to go.
And I think there's a lot of folks that, when they think about the buy, they think about, okay, I'm just going to get something out of the box that solves the need today. To your point, Travis, they don't really think about the future. And, I know we'll kind of unpack a little bit like the different approaches of buy, because that means a lot of different things. But, having the ability to have your own customization within that buy option, like presents a unique opportunity for that business scale down the road. And I think on the business front, it creates a unique opportunity too for folks like myself and Derek over the years, and being able to experiment with different types of partners. Because if you're building everything 100% from scratch, and you may get one integration build a quarter, if you're lucky, and Travis, you probably laugh if like, maybe, those are internal dev
Depends on
resources.
it. Depends on the integration. It depends on the resources.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. But ultimately, there should always be a business case built for the reason you want to have an integration. But if you're kind of going that buy route, or that assisted integration route, it gives you a little bit more flexibility in trying new things. And also, if you're going down a kind of vertical of partner that you've already built an integration for in the past, I think it gives you a lot of flexibility of kind of reusing some of that logic that you've already developed or used to go try and experiment and say, hey, let's go do a go to market and try to drive new customer acquisition or increase customer retention and so forth. So I think it presents some unique ways because you've already got some of that infrastructure and some of that know-how in place when you're kind of building like a hybrid approach on some of these integrations.
Yeah. It allows you to take more risks.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to take those risks.
To being fair, I will say the pros of in-house build, because I've done sort of all sides of this thing. When we talk to folks out in the world, I always tell them, like, if you're a data analytics company, so you're essentially like dashboards on top of a billion data sources. If you are yourself an integration company, it makes sense to spend the time, right, to like build a lot of infrastructure around this because it's going to be essentially your product, right? Like you need all of these things to exist. And, I think the impulse for in-house build, Travis, to your point, is to get around vendor lock-in. You own it. And to really have ultimate flexibility. Like you could do whatever your engineering team is able to do by building this stuff in-house. To your point, Travis, I think in our experience, it takes a lot longer than folks think to get to that place, or as it bleeds out, scope just continues to get cut and you end up with like the Mist of the MVPs, and that ends up just being the product. I mean, I've managed those projects too, right? Where it's like beautiful best laid plans, the scope is like, oh, it's going to be 3 months, we're going to have this amazing thing, and then at the end of 6 months, you end up with this tiny fraction like duct tape together, and that just ends up being the product forever. But I get I get the impulse to want to do it in-house. Like software is software. We know how to build software. Everyone on this call is probably a software person. So, I think it's definitely an interesting calculation to determine which way to go. And sort of on a similar note, how do you guys think about the pros and cons of buying? And I think of buying as both like buying technology, so like buying an integration platform, and also potentially working with outsourced developers. So doing boost capacity or sending, 100% of the work to your outsourced developers. I don't know, Travis, if you have thoughts, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you just said, and those are all things also to think about too. And we're kind of starting to segue probably into where Pandium fits better in some regards than the next two. You have, I think of Pandium as kind of like a hybrid. You guys help you take care of the infrastructure side of things 100%, right? So that part is huge in its own right. And you take care of the authorizations and that coding aspect and maintenance aspect, and then you can take care of the actual integration portions too, or we can do it, or you can do it and then we maintain it and so forth. Like it's a nice hybrid model there. And so we do have access to our own code there, but let's say we got to a scaling and we had to rush on creating 4 new integrations in the next month or whatever it is, we could lean on you guys. So we have that flexibility to do that, while at the same time we have the flexibility where it's like, oh, there's a bug, right? And we can go in, my internal team can go in and fix it right now. Not to say your team wouldn't be able to go in and fix it right now, but we don't have to even slack you. Like it's just like, oh, this is a quick fix, just boom, knock it out, push it up, done. So it's great from that hybrid standpoint. What I would probably back up for a second and say that, like, if your integration necessities are different, let's say your platform integrates with platform B, and the way it integrates with platform B can be vastly different for each customer of yours. There's models out there that are better fit for that, where you create solutions to each integration per customer and you can do these other wild things inside of it. That was never a necessity for us. And then most of the people in the space, I think, is like you scope out what an integration can do. You create the UI inside your platform to allow the customer to manage those feature sets of that integration. And the integration code itself is just ready for whatever those settings was sent to it. So it doesn't have to be changed. So, but again, it all kind of vastly depends on that front. I think the majority go absolutely lean towards the same side that Justuno does with respect to that. And then it's really just, all right, do you need help on the infrastructure? Do you need help? Do you need help on coding? Do you want to own it? Do you not want to own it? Do you only want to own a piece of it? So yeah.
And I think it's kind of unique to, like you called out, the ability to support customers or support like bug needs. Like clearly, if there's bugs, like having that ability to very quickly go in and like identify that on your own, because you guys actually own the code of the integration. Like you said, like we're focused
Yeah,
on.
talking about Pandium. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think I mean, I think that's a pro when you're building in-house, and then kind of like this hybrid approach in which Pandium takes. But I think about it from the go-to-market standpoint is because of that, I think it actually gives you more ability, whether building in-house or kind of going the hybrid approach, gives you the ability to get into additional partner programs. And Derek, I'm sure you've seen this, and where there's some partner programs that won't let you be a part of it if you don't have a native integration. Buying a workflow off the shelf that says, yeah, this is going to transfer data to this, that's not necessarily buying, that's not that native experience, because you're actually relying on a third party then to support why something might be broken or data might not be flowing appropriately. So I think from a support standpoint, there's a positive to either building in house or kind of going like with a hybrid approach. And that's just what I've seen. And having managed marketplaces and programs previous to Pandium, we didn't want people using kind of like these off the shelf integration flows because they didn't have insight into when things went down, and it created a mess of a problem from a customer support perspective.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the only thing that I have to add to all of this is that, like, when you think of it in terms of where you want your team to be investing their resources, like Travis was talking about earlier, we can lean on a partner like you to do more of the, customizations and like deeper integrations if we want to. But like Travis was saying, with our standard use case of why we would integrate with a certain partner, if you can just have that outsourced to somebody else like you guys to take care of that, our developers can focus on what they need to focus on, which is like sharpening the knife of our own product and making our product a better product. And I see that happen quite a bit, right? Where it's like, okay, we have to go back and we have to take care of this and we have to fix this because it isn't working. If you have a team that can do that for you, you can really stay focused and hyper fixated on your product, which is ultimately the most important thing, right? In developing your product. So
Yeah, to help you with doing it, whether they do it for you, but still at the end of the day, it's your code and you have access to it. It's our code and we have access to it, whether Pandium wrote it for us or not. And the positives there are endless because, it makes, as we mentioned, it makes the ability to go and tweak something, whether it's because it's a bug or it's an update or whatever it may be, is to be able to just go in and tweak it on the fly at any point. It could be in the middle of the night if your devs are offshore and, Pandium's hopefully, most of you guys are hopefully asleep in bed. So, being able to do that. And also there's always a potential use case where one of our integrations at some point in the future makes more sense to move it into more of a native model on our end, but not all of them, right? So like again, it's our code, so we can do this. So it makes that back surgery that I talked about a little bit or a lot less in the future if I mean, I don't foresee this ever being the case with Pandium or not, and obviously in the foreseeable future, but in the case where we did have to move off, it is our code that we've invested in. It wasn't waiting 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 12 weeks for Pandium to write their own code that they resell and own, and I just get to leave it when I want to leave, and that's it. So that's also a huge factor. Again, think really into the future.
Yeah, and coming from, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say on the sort of buy spectrum, coming from someone who's been responsible from like the technical side, supporting all of these integrations, I will say using a platform, whether that's something like us that I think is a little more hybrid or something that is more of a traditional iPaaS, you do get some customer support tooling, right? So like your CS team at Justuno, if there is an issue and you guys are using an iPass, they have a place to go to potentially troubleshoot versus having to Travis run over to someone on your team, ask them to look through logs. Oftentimes with in-house build, you're not going to get a lot of those UIs and stuff unless you guys have really, really gone down range and built a lot of stuff. The flip side of that is that you are then, as a user of those platforms, you have to learn how to use those too, right? So it's no longer just that the NetSuite integration's not working and you want to be able to figure out why. It's also you have to be an expert on some of those tools, which I think there's that trade-off, right, between the in-house, the time it takes to build the stuff in-house, the flexibility of that, versus maybe you get something out the door a little bit faster with the platform, but you're learning that platform. And to your point, Travis, like you're then tied into that platform. And if it doesn't do what you need, or if the logging is not clear because it's not baked into that specific system, that can definitely be a stumbling block. I mean, we went through this in previous lives.
Well, I mean, it's not even stumbling, what can be a huge blocker though too is considering in those iPaaS type platforms, again, it's their IP, right? At the end of the day, and they have to make every decision they make from a resource standpoint on their end has to be obviously based on maybe you're using an integration that in their ecosystem is hardly ever used. They built it 4 years ago for whatever partner to integrate in with, and you're one of 2 clients of theirs that actually uses it. There's an update that's necessary for one reason or another. That API got updated, whatever it may be, or even more unfortunate for you in this type of for us in this type of scenario with an iPaaS company, it's not even a bug per se. It's like, hey, we really need this tweak or this extra API route added on to it or whatever it is, so to be able to use it how we intended to use it in the first place. And then you get to start this is where the real pain and suffering happens in those situations, because you reach out to your CS and you say you ask nicely for this stuff, and they go and they respond nicely, let me check with my internal team, and then that takes a week, and then they get back to you and they're like, can you tell us the cause and effect or the blah blah blah, and it's like you got to fill out this whole piece of paper, this whole sheet of questions and answers that's so unnecessary from your perspective. It is from them, because they're trying to decide, do we put our $200 an hour or more developers resources on this for this one client, or do we keep them on the new integration that they see 400 clients wanting, right? And then ultimately, if you're lucky, after all of that, they go, okay, we will have it done in 2 or 3 weeks. That's best case scenario, right? Middle case scenario, like average case scenario is, yes, we put it on our feature request list. We will let you know when we start progress on it. Is there a date? Not at this time. Worst case scenario is, sorry, we're going through growing pains ourselves, and we're lacking resources right now. And I'm not making this stuff up, guys. Like, I've heard all.
I was going to say, we're not going to ask who or when or
I've
why.
heard all of it directly from these solutions, because we've done all these solutions. We've done the do it ourselves, the full managed iPaaS situation, whatever, and the hybrid model. So yeah, this is all from past experiences. So yeah, those are big things that they're just blockers. You're like, but I have a client. I have a 10K a month MRR client that either we just sold or it's a prospect that we're trying to sell who just needs this, and you're killing me, guys, right? Whereas a hybrid model like Pandium, or do-it-yourself model at least, you do have the ability to update that and make those necessary changes.
Well, that was actually a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about, Travis, and the challenges with some of the other providers out there, where most of the providers go, okay, we're going to focus on this specific segment or market or this ideal customer profile. And then a lot of the times what ends up happening is, like, if the dev team is making the decision sometimes, maybe sometimes they're not thinking of it in terms of like maybe partnerships and sales, like who's the ideal customer profile. And I think a lot of companies actually have that misalignment between their sales and partnerships teams and their dev teams and their integrations teams. So when you're working with somebody like Pandium, it gives the confidence knowing that, okay, if we end up, working with them, we know that like if we don't have the connectors for certain people that we need to have connectors for, they're going to find a workaround for it. Whereas what Travis was talking about, where, other providers, it's like, let me get back to you. And then you're given the runaround. And then you're like, man, I just invested so much money into this solution. And it's like, we can't even get the integrations that we need to get built to help us move the needle and get business running. They have all these other ones, but they don't have any of this. So, yeah.
And always
That's
keep in mind, no matter what solution you're
Yeah.
prospecting, like there's always a honeymoon phase. Always.
Yeah.
It starts with that first phone call and it ends, generally speaking, 6 months in, or when things kind of get off the ground. The less the honeymoon phase impacts you. Like, I still love my wife. My honeymoon phase is long over. Right? But I'm not leaving her. I still love her and everything. So the less of the big deal portion of this partnership is based on that honeymoon phase, the better, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Really compared to wildly different things.
I mean, look, I think
I
at
hope
the
your
end of
wife
the
is watching, so you affirm that you love her.
Yeah.
I really love her a
she's
lot.
special.
I think, like at the end of the day, there isn't like a silver bullet where you get both like incredible simplicity and absolutely no complexity and 100% flexibility. Like those two things are just like in conflict when it comes to technology, kind of, period. Like I'm struggling to think of a place where you get to do anything that you want that you could do with modern coding or technology, and you don't have to be an engineer, and it's like super duper easy and it's bulletproof. Like those two things are just, there's a calculation you have to make between like
Derek,
how
keep that
much
in
do
mind for our
sorry
new platform.
For what?
I said how she's explaining that. That's literally V4.
Oh, yeah. 100%. 100%.
Oh, sorry, Christine.
No. And I think, and this will move on to our final topic, which is like the key decision criteria. And like, I think that kind of feeds into that, right? It's like, where do you fall on that spectrum? Like when we're talking to folks, whether it's under the guise of Pandium or in previous lives, it was always, to me, like, how confident are we that the complexity of this is going to be low? Like, if you're telling me that you are a software company that just needs to move first name to first name between two systems forever, first name is the only thing you care about, like, I think you can get away with a lot of integration tools. Like, that is gonna work for you most of the time. If you either need more than that, or like you're actually not sure and your own product is also evolving pretty rapidly, that is where I think it's time to really look into something that is not maybe what is advertised as that silver bullet. Like, you can get everything production ready in an afternoon. That's like I would say that's sort of where I think about high level, how to gauge where you should go. Derek, I don't know if you have thoughts on that. Like, if you're a new company or it's a new integration, even that, a partnership you're trying to build, like, how do you decide where to kind of sit on that spectrum? Other than just what Travis tells you to do.
And let me make sure I understand the question correctly. You're just talking about in terms of where I go, okay, this is somebody that we want to build an integration with, like what goes into that decision-making process?
I'm thinking more around like how would you think about, hey, are we going to build this? Are we going to hire someone to build this? Like, do you have any thoughts on the implementation of that solution? Like, should we go get that outsourced team that says they can do it in an afternoon? Like, are there any kind of patterns that you follow around some of that decision making? Or even from a business perspective, like, do we do this at all? Just any high level thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, it ultimately comes down to just the business case of whoever it is that you're deciding to integrate with, and then really having a solid business case for that. And then I think in terms of, getting that done, that obviously is all dependent on how your organization is set up to handle those things. And so that's where I think that we at Justuno have done a really good job at being really kind of tight at the hip. Me and Travis are pretty tight at the hip when it comes to these decisions. And I think we're aligned too on, when these types of things comes up, like, how do we want to approach them and how do we want to handle them? And leveraging your team to help us with that is what we have decided is going to help us make those decisions a lot easier to get rid of what used to be a huge blocker for us, which is just like even getting this rolling or even thinking about doing it. So that's really helped make it a lot easier. It's helped us make it easier to roadmap. It's helped make it easier for us to determine, what is the timeline of this sprint and when it's going to end. Whereas in the past, it was like, okay, this is going to have to be something that's going to be an ongoing discussion for 2 years until we can build this thing. And then that partnership and it fizzles out and it just dies and it just goes away. And then all you're working on are your existing partnerships that you've been managing for the past 3 years. And you're seeing your company growth just not, go anywhere. That's what I have to add to that.
John, and then Travis, I want to hear your thoughts on this too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I spend a lot of time on the GTM side of things. It's very near and dear to my heart. Again, part of the reason I came here is because I've experienced the challenges of working with internal product and so forth in previous roles, and that's not me crapping on any of them. It's literally just like there's a lot of things going on. There's core product to build and to support and so forth, but thinking about the GTM side, I mean, I remember years ago trying to build a business case to go integrate into now what is the largest e-commerce platform in the world. This is before they became the juggernaut that they are. And it took me 6 months to convince my team internally that we should build this integration. There was lots of back and forth conversations of understanding how much, total addressable market they had, how quickly they were growing. We were doing a lot of that assessment and so forth. And we eventually got it built, but it had to be slotted in. Once it was slotted in, we knew it was going to come in like which quarter. And then by the time we were slotting it in, APIs were changing and updating. There was a lot of moving pieces to the pie of getting that done. So, I mean, I think that's probably like one of the biggest challenges. I think there's some tools out there that are, some kind of like iPaaS and like no code and low code solutions where sometimes you can just build a quick, um, just kind of like a quick, like, I guess,
POC.
yeah, like a
Prototype, yeah.
POC. Yeah, yeah, just kind of like, hey, I want to prove this out, make sure it's going to work. I think doing
Yeah.
things like that works in some cases. But if you've already kind of rinsed and repeated and you know how to build these integrations, then if you can build them, go build them. It's like, if it's not going to take you an entire quarter to launch it with either in-house resources or the assist of an external company, then let's go test it. I mean, it's just like testing new marketing opportunities. I mean, these are ways that you get into is the power of three whenever you partner with companies. And this is not really on topic, but I'll make a plug like for the partner community and the folks that are running these partnerships, like organizations need to think about dedicating more resources to helping them get these integrations built. And I will leave it at that.
Yeah.
And Travis, what are you telling folks who are like, what do I do? What do I do about this integration problem? You've been down the road.
Yeah. Well, I'll plug it, but I'm not. But this is the actual answer. Reach out to Pandium. Pandium's gonna put you in touch with me, and then not will, but they can, and it's because the reason why is so you can hear it from me, and I can. But before I answer the question, I can hear your situation, right? What it is you need, what it is you're trying to solve for, what you've tried in the past, where you think you'll be in the future, because I've done it all. I've been through it all. And so I then I'm gonna tell you what I think. Realistically speaking, I'm not gonna bullshit you. Is if Pandium is the best fit for you, or if one of the other ones possibly are, or if you're talking about, oh, I only need to make one integration a year, and I don't need retrike queues, I don't need all this stuff. Possibly doing it yourself. I don't know, but definitely, I mean, Derek, the whole GTM stuff is huge, a factor that I'm glad came up in this conversation too, because you know, Derek's being very nice in how he approached that. Him and I, and this is common in every company is how we have a tug of war. right? Like, from
Yeah.
a CTO development standpoint, also co-founders sell revenue and possibilities and prospects and all that thing. It always comes down to, it's like, are we going to do a build it and they will come
Yeah.
situation? Or is there enough proof in the pudding that they're at the door waiting for you to open it? Integration partners that are like, we're going to send you 1,000 clients if you build an integration with us tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? And it's reading through in between the lines with those guys. There's just so many things at play. Granted, for one reason or another, between just history and also even just Derek and I working together now for so long, like we certainly have understand each other and understand how to better solve for these equations that pop up all the time. Um,
Uh,
that's very, very important, and your ability to launch quicker, as John was saying, like a proof of concept, your ability to launch quicker certainly helps solve for a lot of those, um, whether it is with your own resources or not.
yeah. And kind of adding to that as well, what I would say, one thing that's been really useful in our decision making process, like if you're a sales or a partnerships leader that happens to be in this conversation, one thing that really helps in your discussions with your development team as well, and kind of tying this all together, know where you're losing. I mean, we know where we were losing, and that helped determine where we needed to invest and where we needed to build these integrations. And so win-loss analysis reports are super critical and super important. And then there's also the other side of it, what Travis was talking about, which was build it and they will come, question mark. Well, you have to see and understand, is there a potential addressable market for that? And having a partner like Pandium allows you to take those calculated risks, which we have found that taking those calculated risks and investing into some of those integrations or those solutions has led to, it's led to opportunities for us as an organization. So I'll kind of just leave it at that.
And one last thing too that
Yeah.
we didn't really touch on. We talked a lot about the go-to-market, but we didn't really talk about like the CS side of things, the customer service and customer
Yes.
side. Is you talked about the win-loss analysis of like net new, but what about the churn analysis? That's kind of dictating like,
That's a
well,
really
I went
good
to a
point.
competitor because they had integration XYZ, or you didn't have this functionality. And that's what these partnerships are, these integrations and partnerships are about, is like really solving customer pain and customer need. And
Yeah.
if you don't plan on building it, then go find a partner that has that functionality and where you can potentially refer business back and forth. And so I think these integrations, while they drive a lot of go to market, they also help quite a bit with the customer retention and then the co-marketing and so forth. Like it really kind of creates this really unique flywheel of helping your business grow and
Absolutely.
ultimately succeed.
Absolutely.
I think you're on mute, Christina.
Uh, Mute.
Rookie mistake.
I was just saying we are as folks who are on this meeting have heard, we'll also send this out afterwards, but there's a lot of different options here. I think there's no one size fits all to solve these problems. It depends a lot on the maturity of your business, the size of your business, what your goals are, the industry you're in, and also your own in-house resources and sort of your culture around this ecosystem internally. But I really appreciate Derek and Travis and John, you guys joining us for some time here to go through this. I feel like we could talk about this stuff forever, and I have so many thoughts about all of these things. Like each of these bullets could be a whole hour-long diatribe that no one wants to hear from me. So if anyone does want to hear from us, please feel free to reach out. We'll have links to sign up to get a copy of this on our site. And really appreciate you guys taking the time, and everyone go visit Justuno as well to check out all the cool stuff that they're doing. We will see you
Right.
guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
y'all. See ya.
Good
Bye.
one. Bye-bye.
See ya.